8 weeks to the day since
which is pretty fucking wild.
She was born. And I was like, no freaking way on the second day of her life does she have that awareness that this is actually what's going on right now. This is Claire Michael Furmore, and today we're going to talk about her birth. It's literally been almost 3 months, I think, since I've even made a video, which is crazy.
It's probably about 6 months since I've been in a video.
I think it's been at least 6 months, if not longer, that you've been in a video. She was born on 11/11/2023 at 6:27 a.m., weighing 3.82 kilograms, which is like 8-something pounds.
I got it somewhere on my phone, the conversion.
Yeah.
But she was 52 centimeters tall. Tall? So we speak weirdly here.
I don't know any of her other stats.
I don't know what that would be in inches.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I'm not sure on the conversion rate. You're welcome to convert it for us if you'd like.
And put it in the comments below.
Yeah, put it in the comments below.
So we can know more about our own daughter.
From your side of the
world. So yeah, I mean, our plan was to have a natural home birth from the beginning, which we did have a natural home birth. So we'll probably put that in I don't know what I'm going to make the title for this to be yet, but a lot of people will do like positive home birth stories, so I might do something along those lines.
But it wasn't a positive. It was a positive home birth.
Yeah, no, it was
completely.
But people will state in the title whether it's like traumatic or not traumatic, because they give you like an update of like, no, if you watch this, it's going to be maybe not good. But
that's good stuff.
We're going to basically just talk about like kind of the whole process, I think.
Everything we went through.
So starting up a few days before, I feel like I kind of had some like start, stop symptoms.
Yeah, well, your Braxton Hicks were getting more intense. So I think there definitely was a start to it.
That day was like super magical. And I felt from the beginning of the day like that she might come. And I actually thought she was going to come that day. Like, remember I said like at 2:00, I was like, oh, she's going to come. But she ended up waiting till the next day, which is like a whole nother story. I don't know how much we're going to be able to cover today.
This might be a 2-part video.
Yeah, this might have to be a 2-part video.
I mean, I remember when I was in the water the whole time, I kept looking back at the shoreline towards you to be like, waiting, like, oh, you mean like the baby's coming, and like then have to paddle out the water quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was a beautiful day.
Yeah, I was thinking when we were at the beach, because at this point I was 1 week over my due date. So she was, we were already kind of like, okay, she's meant to be coming. And then we got to a certain point, or I got to a certain point where I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to sit around the house anymore. Let's just do stuff that we want to do. So we ended up going to the beach, and it was so magical. And I felt really, really strongly that she had chosen to give us that day together, because you were actually supposed to be working that day. Originally, remember, it was a Friday and you were going to be working, but then something happened.
Well, my dad gave me the day off just because the fact it was so close to the birth and we weren't too sure what was going to happen over that weekend. I think then he also ended up doing something else and went to George or something.
No, wasn't it the guys? The guys, like, he said, see you guys on like the next week or something. Remember, there was like a miscommunication with the guys and nobody showed up.
Was it that day?
I think so.
That day was a bit of a blur.
Yeah, no, for good reason. Yeah. But either way, you, for whatever random reason, weren't working. So we decided, let's go do something. You actually didn't have any surfboards, like your regular ones. So you took your soft top and you're like, well, we'll just go mess around on this.
Yeah, play around, because I didn't know if I was going to be in the water for 5 minutes or 2 hours. I was like, let me just take the fun board and go play around a bit.
Yeah.
And it was a good session.
Yeah. And the water was beautiful. Sometimes it's really cold, but it was actually beautiful. I actually swam for a while with her, which was so nice. And it was so nice to get that like light feeling, because at that point in the pregnancy, obviously you're so big that everything is like heavy. But as you were saying, you didn't know like whether I was going to signal for you to come in from the water. Like I also like, remember there was like this massive dune at that time, walking up from where we had put our stuff to where the actual water was. I kept thinking like, this walking up and down this dune from the water is going to put me into labor. I was like, this is going to be like, I'm just going to go into labor right here on the beach. But obviously we didn't. No. We had a nice time. We went home. Day. Yeah. And then nothing really like super crazy. I don't even remember what we had for dinner that night.
I have no idea. It was a very nice, relaxed evening. We kind of just did our normal thing, watched some TV together and chilled and chatted a bit, and then went to bed. And then you woke me up at like 5 to 12 saying they're getting intense, or you had, I think you had one or two before you woke me up, and you're like, I've had one or two, they're getting intense, and then that's when I downloaded the timer to see how long in between there were, and then they were like, first few were like 5 minutes. Yes, they were like 5 minutes apart, Baba, and then suddenly went from 5 minutes to like anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes, like within like 15 minutes, and like, ooh, call the midwives. By the way, this is what's happening. And
yeah, I do remember I've said this a few times, but I do remember making like a silent prayer to like the universe in the days before, being like, you know what, if it's intense and if it's labor that everyone says that it is, then I would rather have it just be intense and fast and be over with than have it be like long dragged out thing. You know, I'd watched so many videos of like people's labor going wrong and then ending up in an emergency C-section and like being in labor for like 40 hours, which obviously I know is like an extreme case, but like that's what I was worried about. So I was like, you know what, if you have to make it more intense, make it more intense, and let's make it quick. And so Claire, we started labor
at
around midnight, and then she was out by 6:27. So you guys can do the math on that, how long that took. And so, okay, so in the actual birthing process, like I do remember as you were calling the midwives, you were setting up the pool. There's so much, it's funny, during labor, there's so much anger coursing through your body. And I think it's because you need that power. Yeah. Exactly. You need that power in order to like push through the pain, you know, like you need that fierceness in a way. Because I remember just being so angry at everything. Like I was so angry that you left me in the bathroom to time my own contractions, you know, even though like you were obviously, like there were so many things I was angry or annoyed about, but I think it was because just so much is going through your body at that time and your body is so overwhelmed with sensations that it's just, you know, it's pretty crazy.
And I also just wanted to get everything ready and get the midwives coming towards us. I mean, our one midwife was about just over an hour away from us. She had to come through, and she's the main lady as well. So I was like, got to get this together, and then I can sort you out.
Which is crazy when you think about how short our labor was. You know, that like, I mean, they had told us stories about like them coming to somebody and not making it in time and the baby being born and then like
coaching him over the phone.
They weren't even there in the flesh. And that was also something I was a little bit scared of. I was like, I didn't want like, you know, to have any complications where they didn't show up on time, or especially because it was our first one. Now that we've had one, if we had a second, I think, you know, I'd be okay with that.
I would still rather have them here.
You know, but I would be less worried.
Just trying to kind of get everything in line, trying to make sure that by the time midwives got here, that all of our focus was just on making you as comfortable as possible and not having to spend too much time trying to set things up. Because, I mean, it could have been 24 hours, it could have been 40 hours, it was 6 hours. So my whole thing at that point was just making sure that all the medical stuff of theirs was all set up, the table set up for them. I had the pool mostly ready, which they kind of finished up when they got here. I had made sure that the water was running, you know, I'd done all the small things so that by the time they got here, I knew, okay, from my side, I didn't have to still run around and do things. I could spend most of my time just with you and trying not to ask you questions and be there as much as I could as possible and give you water, and if you need something to eat, to have something there for you to snack on. And that was kind of my main thing.
Did you feel scared or anything, or did you feel more like calm? Like how did you feel during that process?
Shitting myself.
You were scared.
I mean, it's something obviously I'd never experienced before, so it's something that I didn't have a clue of as to what we were getting ourselves into. So I was scared, but overall, I knew that with the team we had with the three ladies, and with you being as strong as you are and me being as crazy as I am, that we would be all right. And I mean, look at us now, 2 months down the line, and we're still going and going strong, and she's beautiful and she's strong, and the birth went amazingly. But yeah, no, I was definitely a bit scared and definitely nervous. Because obviously you hear the stories of things that can go wrong, and you don't want to put any energy into that, because you obviously want to focus on the better things, but you still have to be realistic in a way and be like, look, these are things that are possible, so you have to still prepare for them. So my kind of philosophy on that is prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah.
Because that way you have everything sorted out, but you're always putting your energy into having the best outcome, which I believe we did end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think so too. One of our friends had an emergency C-section, but they were planning on having a natural birth at home. And so one of the advice that they actually gave us was to pack a hospital bag. They're like, even though you don't want to go to the hospital, like you should still pack a bag, because they didn't pack a bag, and then they were running around like crazy people trying to get whatever they might need to be in the hospital overnight. So that was one thing that we did have that I think made both of us feel a lot more like, it made me feel a lot more secure and a lot more calm, because I knew all of my stuff was in like one area. I agree with you to be ready for what could potentially happen, but then also hope for, you know, like a 6-hour labor. That's incredible for a first time.
It's insanely quick.
First time labor. Yeah. So it is, and it didn't feel like that. I hate when you do that, because it didn't feel like that at all.
I know.
Like
it seemed like that when you shot out though.
Yeah, I know, but like when you do that, like it gives the impression almost that it was easy, you know?
It wasn't
and
easy.
And so when
it
you talk to
easy.
people and you say like, oh, it just popped out. I'm like, no, it didn't just freaking pop out. Like you have no idea what actually went through. I mean, you saw what went through, obviously.
I felt it on a different level, but that's my way of also lighting up for myself, because it, as much as a traumatic thing it was for you, and I'll never take that away from you, there's a lot of trauma that me as a partner that I go through as well, because I mean, it's something we'll probably touch on a little bit later, but I mean, one of the hardest parts for me during the whole thing was seeing you in that amount of pain that you're in, because that was not easy. See, even Claire's not happy about that. It's something as a partner, when you truly care about the person that you love and that you're having this life with, that when you see them in that much pain, it really messes you up. Seeing you in deep amount of pain, and like I said, not being able to do anything, being able to give you water, food, console you and massage you, and that's all I could really do. And for me as a person who really likes to just be able to do as much as I can to help you, and you know, go a bit too much sometimes, that was very difficult for me, because I just wanted to do more, but I couldn't.
You feel a little bit helpless.
I felt very helpless. I mean, as well, you're going through like this deep pain that I can't even begin to imagine, and I wouldn't want to even think about going through, but I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And that for me was very, very difficult.
Yeah. Was there any point during the birth that you thought, oh gosh, maybe she can't do this? No. I thought that about like every 5 minutes. And it's really funny, because for me it was very spiritually powerful that I understood at a really deep level, which this I think should for me translate more to my outside life. I would probably be a little bit like happier maybe if I translated this to my outside life. So this is actually, as I'm speaking this, I'm like learning the lesson right now, which I love when that happens.
Me too.
But it was very real to me, and I understood, because I didn't say much during labor.
Well, you couldn't really.
I yelled a lot. I was very vocal in that way, but I didn't say much. But in my head was like every 5 minutes was like, oh my God, there's no way I can continue doing this. I can't do this. How far along am I? Because our midwives, like they very much go based on what they see, like in terms of how the labor is progressing. And they don't necessarily, like my labor was progressing so fast, they didn't check me to see how dilated I am. Like that's a very common thing in Western medicine, is to check immediately, like, and 1,000,000 times, like every hour or whatnot. Like, you know, they would still check the baby's heartbeat. They were, you know, they weren't negligent by any means. So I don't want you guys to watch this and be like, oh wow, like shitty midwives. Like they've delivered so many babies, they don't actually need to check. And she actually said that to me when I was in transition, I remember, because in my head I was like, there is no way I can continue doing this. And she saw the look on my face, and she's like, I know where you're at right now. We're almost time to push. And she's like, do you want me to check you and see how dilated you are? She's like, I know exactly where you're at, but if you want me to check you so that you know, like,
peace of mind,
I will. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? No, it's fine. Like I had faith that she knew exactly what she was talking about.
And they did say that if we want, they will check along the way. So that's...
Yeah, they gave us that option.
Many times.
But, you know, it was very clear to me in my mind that if I spoke out loud the things I was thinking, it was going to, like, kill my labor, you know, and it was going to make it take longer. It was going to make it, you know, fall apart. And so, like, it was very, very clear. And it was like being in almost like a really bad trip, you know, like being on, like, a really bad mushroom trip or acid trip or ayahuasca or whatever you want to use the terms of, but it was like being on a bad trip where I could see everything that was happening and was like, okay, if I follow that path, this is what's going to happen. If I follow this path, that's what's going to happen. And so it was very clear to me that if I said anything like negative about what was happening, because I was in so much pain and because, I wasn't thinking clearly and because, you go into this whole other space, that was going to be what created the reality. So I think that's mostly why I also didn't speak a lot, was because like I could see very clearly on a spiritual level that if I did speak poorly of what was happening, that it was going to make that happen even more, which is exactly what happens in normal life. I'm just not as aware of it. I think in normal life, it's easier to go unconscious when you're just living your everyday life and complaining about things. Whereas
and when you're going through that, you're very aware of what's happening to you, even though you might not remember it 100% afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
Or directly afterwards.
Yeah. No. So for me, there was definitely skepticism on whether I could actually do this or not, where I think what's really cool is when you have a partner, like a partnership like we have, that like when one partner is feeling weak, the other one, usually one of us has complete faith in the other person if the other person doesn't have like complete faith in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, through the whole thing, I mean, I knew it was going to be a difficult journey for you. I knew it was going to be very, very taxing on your body and your mind and et cetera, whatever categories you want to put it into. But as well, I knew that no matter what, you would get to the other side and that you would be right. I had no doubt in mind of that at all. Obviously, when we had to go do the other thing with the placenta, and that had me a bit worried.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I knew that as long as we just kept positive and just went through it and with the people that we knew and we trusted to get us through these moments, that we would be all right.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my main focus. And having those ladies there by our side throughout the entire thing, it really helped me. I mean, obviously, the two midwives were mostly with you, and then the doula, she was with me, and it really helped me having somebody there as well, which I think is as well, it's one of those things that doesn't get discussed a lot of times. I mean, I don't know what it's like having a hospital birth because we haven't had one of those, but for a home birth, obviously all the focus is always on the mother, rightfully so. But as the partner, we still go through a hell of a lot. And to have the doula who's still there for you and for the baby as well, but to have that support from myself, from my side, made a huge difference. It also made it a lot easier for me, because if it got to a point where if I was getting tired or if something was going on with me, I knew I could go to her and be like, I need your help. Can you please just take over for a few seconds, go take a breather, go to the toilet, whatever it may be, and then be able to come back and be like, okay, I've now recollected myself, and not putting that onto you when you're already going through so much.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. And I think, like going back to that, like if men aren't supported in supporting women in labor, then they actually become more of a burden than anything. You know what I mean? Because you had that clarity around, don't ask questions, just give the water, just give the support, just do this, just do that. Because you had that clarity around it, I think it made you a much better birth partner. I think you probably generally are intuitive enough to have known most of that anyways, but because there's that confirmation of somebody saying, yes, you're doing it right, it takes out that doubt in the mind, and sometimes when you have doubt in the mind, it makes people act funny.
Well, not even so much as someone telling you you're doing it right. I mean, of course, always when you're going through things like that, having someone being like, you're doing a really good job makes a hell of a difference. But just to have support, even if you're completely fucking it up, to have support that you know that if you do need that little bit extra, that extra hand or whatever it may be, that there's somebody there who's not your partner, because you can't rely on your partner during that. I mean, there's no ways I could come to you with anything during that process, because it would have made me feel really shitty inside as well, and you definitely would have taken away completely from that.
No, definitely.
So it really just makes a big difference, and I think it's something that sadly gets very overlooked, because during the process, the biggest concern is always the mother, rightfully so. I have no doubt about that as well, but I think if we can implement that during those processes, that there is some sort of a support structure for the father as well, what that will do for the birthing, for the both partners as well, and for the child as everything comes into, because there's such a good synergy with everything together. I mean, I think it makes it a lot easier and a lot more smooth, and I think that's also why things went as well as it did with us, and why it also probably went as quick as it did as well. There were so many factors that went into this to make it the way that it was.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you can't overlook those small details there. They really make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. Did end up having some complications. And I do think, it's funny because they always say like you're given the birth that you need to have. And I definitely had a little bit of fear about going to the hospital. I tried to address a lot of that in like the processing I was doing when I was pregnant, because I was processing a lot about the birth when I was pregnant. But there was still that fear of like, what if I have to go to the hospital? And I don't really enjoy going to hospitals. I feel like a lot of people in this space or in my generation are choosing more natural home births just because of the fact that it feels more natural. We like being in our own space. We generally are kind of mistrustful of government systems or just institutions in general. So there was definitely a part of me that was afraid to go to the hospital. And I do think that part of me is what maybe put the resistance into play. So what ended up happening was I couldn't pass my placenta. So we had passed an hour, the baby came, she fed right away. Like everything was going perfectly, like literally
vitals were fine.
Like chef's kiss, perfectly. And then, some hours go by and the midwives are like, okay, the placenta's not coming. Let's give you some holistic remedies. Let's, give you a shot of, what is it called? Syntro or something like that.
I can't remember.
Let's give you a shot of this to try and induce some contractions to see if the placenta will come. Still not coming, still feeling fine. We didn't have anybody come over. So if you guys know, we live literally right next door to James's parents on their property. And so it was your like decision that we weren't going to have them come over until that was passed.
Yeah, for me, I wanted to first make sure that everything with us was completely finished. We had gone through the birthing process. We had both gotten a moment just to take our own breath and be like, okay, we there before we had people coming into the space and trying to talk to us that weren't part of our crew.
Yeah.
Which for me was important as well, and I know especially for you it's important because you're very, very sensitive to other people coming in, and not that my parents have a very overwhelming. I mean, they do, but they don't. Yeah. I don't know how to express
Only
that.
100% support from them.
I mean 100% support, but just for us to be in our own space and just be settled before people came in and started kind of asking questions and asking if they can hold her and asking how you doing and how was the experience. People like, let's just get it done first, get settled, and then from there we could. And I stand by that decision.
Yeah, no, for sure.
110%.
Yeah,
every single time.
I felt really that, like a lot of worries, I think, as a new mother is that like those things will happen. You won't be able to speak up for yourself, or family is going to take too much of your energy, or like whatever possibilities that could be. And I do feel like you did an incredible job as the man. I don't know if I've even told you this, but I do. I have thought many times, and I continue to think like during the whole process, like that you did an incredible job protecting the space. And that's really what, I think you're supposed to do as a man and as a divine masculine. Like you're supposed to protect the space, protect the containers so that things can happen the way that they did happen. But so then, hours go by and we're at like 6 hours at this point, right?
It was about 6 hours before we left.
And then I really started feeling like not so good. I started to kind of lose touch with reality a little bit, and I was feeling like really, really, really out of my body, like really detached from reality, and I was starting to feel like really poor. But my vitals were still fine all the way through. A little bit pale. Okay.
Yeah, you did kind of change a bit of color, but.
Okay. There's not a lot about that I remember. I do remember talking to the midwives a lot about the emotional processing of why the placenta may not have come, because I do remember us having a conversation about like me still kind of wanting to be pregnant, or not wanting that part of my life to be over yet, like I felt like maybe even though she was a week late, I felt like it kind of came too soon, or like I wasn't ready to be done with it, or, all of this stuff. So I was crying a bit, and I do remember having some emotional processing around releasing the placenta, because it was like a beautiful the placenta's vital for both of our survival during that time. And so such an important organ, to have. And so I think there was definitely some emotions. And I think there still is some emotion around that I still haven't been able to process. Because as we know, when you have like a birth and you have trauma in a birth, and just birth in general is traumatic, and then you go right into taking care of another human life, you don't really have the time to process things the way that you would normally. So I'm still taking pieces and pieces and pieces over time. But I started to feel really not good. And I had this very distinct fear during this time that if I closed my eyes, I wasn't going to wake back up. And so I think...
That was heavy.
Yeah, I think that was really heavy. And I think the ladies could see it in my... I didn't speak this into reality until afterwards, because again, like I had this very real understanding that whatever I spoke into existence was going to be the case. So I don't think I said that at all.
About 15 minutes before we left, when we were going to the car, you were speaking to, who was in the back?
Bronwyn.
Bronnie was in the back with you, and you were saying to her that if you closed your eyes and tried to like relax, that you weren't going to come back. You did say to her
that I wasn't going to come back. Okay. I did use that terminology. Like I said like I was going to go away. Yeah. Because I was afraid to say, like, what I really felt like was that I was going to die, but I didn't want to actually use those words. So I was like, I feel like I'm not going to come back. I'm going to go away. Yeah, you're right. I did say that. Yeah. And so what ended up happening was the midwives transported us. You drove separately to the hospital. And you guys, we are like literally out kind of in the middle of nowhere out here in the Crags. So we are about 35 minutes from the hospital?
30 to 40 minutes from the closest like hospital that we went to.
Yeah. And so, it's a little bit of a drive. But you guys were racing. And I remember as soon as we got into the car, I felt so much lighter. Like I was like, we are moving in the right direction. We are going to the right place. So it's funny, like all of this fear of going to the hospital, like completely melted away the moment we got in the car. And I was like, yes. And I felt like I literally said this to Bronwyn. I was like, it's a new adventure. I was like, we're going on a new adventure. And I felt like so excited to go to the hospital. So it was so funny because I was like dreading it before doing it, which is usually how a lot of like things happen. If you're afraid of something, you're usually dreading it. Yeah. And then as soon as you do it, you're like, oh, that was amazing. Or that went better than I thought it would, or like whatever. So how did you feel in those moments of like, okay, we have to go to emergency hospital?
I mean, obviously at that point it had been much longer than it probably should have been to go there. Not by anybody's fault. I mean, everything was perfectly fine. Vital was 100%, and then suddenly there was just a bit of a dip, which was obviously very scary. During that whole process, because obviously I was following in a car behind you. My parents offered to drive me, and at that point I said no. I said I need to be in control in order to get there myself. Because obviously at that point as well, I had so little control over everything that was happening. For me to be able to at least control something, I think brought me a lot of kind of, I don't want to say peace, but peace in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I was also driving like a bat out of hell, flying down the N2, following behind you guys in my tiny little, very underpowered car compared to what you're in. Trying to phone your parents, got hold of your dad during that process to let him know what was happening and try and keep them up to date, which I think as well was a very good way for me to help process through it, because obviously I was alone in the car driving behind them, and I didn't really have anyone to really talk to, and I didn't really want to talk, but for me to tell your dad and your mom and all of them about it, I felt like it was the right thing to do for them as well, to understand where we're at, and as well, for me, it helped me hugely. I mean, it was quite something, and getting to the hospital and trying to park my car and sprinting up towards you with all the bags and shit that I had in my car with me, and just trying to get you inside safely so we could find out what's happening, to the one lady not allowing me to come towards the one door, to me just being like, no, we phoned already, she's coming in here now. It was an experience and a half, and just when I eventually saw you after everything, it was a big weight off my shoulders. Yeah.
And it was really like, it was a very, very, very quick process. Like when we did get to the hospital, like we came in straight into the emergency room. I thought I was going into surgery. So there, I had a lot of like mistrust around the hospital, just based on my own, preconceived ideas. And so I thought we were going directly into surgery because that's what the midwives had told me, and that's what they had spoken about to the doctors that were there, because they did know that we were coming. Big stretch. Oh, and back to sleep. And so, I had thought I was going straight into surgery. So I'd come to terms with, okay, I'm going into surgery. I'm going to be cut open. Like, that's going to happen today. And then I get into the emergency room and they start, okay, we're going to put you in an IV. We're going to put a catheter in. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I'm like, am I going into surgery? And they're like, no. And I was like, oh God, here we go. They're going to fuck me up. And then I kind of had to just let go of all of that and just be in, this state of like complete and total surrender to these people know what they're doing. They're going to take care of me. And once I did that, I had like just the most amazing experience. I had the most amazing nurses, the most amazing doctors. Like within 5 minutes, it was quite painful, but within 5 minutes, they had the placenta out, and, like I was just being monitored at that point. They were going to stitch me up from the tears I had. My bladder was empty, and I was like feeling so good. Like
so much better.
No pain medicine or anything, but I felt so much better. I was like, this was amazing. And I remember when I was being stitched up, I was just looking around at the nurses and the doctors, and I was like, just overwhelmed with a feeling of gratitude for being there, because I felt like I really, truly, in terms of my birth experience, like I got to have the best of both worlds, right? So I got to have this beautiful home birth experience, which was intense and crazy and magical and everything you can possibly imagine. And then I also got to have this wonderful, radical kind of emergency hospital experience where I really loved all the doctors and nurses. I really felt taken care of. I felt like everyone was on my side. They wanted what was best for me. I didn't feel judged for having a home birth. Like, I really felt taken care of there. And so that to me was amazing. And then it was really cool also to be able to go up to the maternity ward with all the other ladies that were in the maternity ward. There was like a really sense of like, I'm here with all the other women that gave birth today. Like, how crazy wild. Is that? Like, every other woman in here gave birth either today or like the day before. And so it was crazy. There was this woman with like these 2 tiny little twins across the bed from me, and that was pretty cool and crazy. I felt like during that time you still were in this space of like, you really were stepping into a power of like saying like what we wanted and what we needed, and you really did have like a very, and it's not your usual MO, you usually can kind of take a step back and like you're not very, like take charge a lot of times because you're such a relaxed person, but in this circumstance, like you were very much like,
Yeah. I mean, I feel a lot of the times I'm the kind of person that I can go with the flow very easily and make things work according to how they're kind of going, where when we go into that situation, for me as well, there was a bit of a hospital fear as well. And the thing is, end of the day, the people that I trusted most were the people that we went through this entire journey on. And for me, when our midwives and doula were saying, this is what we can do now, and the doctor was saying, no, that's wrong, you can only do this, and I was like, hang on a second here, I understand you guys have got your procedures because they have to do things in a certain order in the hospital in order to follow regulations so they don't get in trouble. And I said, look, I can understand that, but I want to chat with my wife, with our midwives and doula, so that we can have an understanding, because obviously we had built such a tight bond with them, and we still chat to them quite often as well to this day.
Literally this morning.
Yeah, literally this morning. And because we had created such a good bond with them, and we all on a very similar page with it, they knew exactly how we were, what the kind of things we wanted, how we want to proceed with things as we move forward. That for me, when people were saying, no, this is what we're going to do, and you don't have a choice, and I was like, that's not right. I'm going to talk to my midwives. I'm going to bring them in here with me as well, so that my wife can chat to them, because they're also all worried about you. I mean, they were just as worried about you as I think I was at times. I said, for me, what would be the best is if I can bring them in here, I can have a chat with them and my partner, and we can come to a decision of how we would like to go forward with things, even though there were certain things that we understood that we had to do before we could potentially leave the hospital. I said, this is something that we need to discuss amongst ourselves so we understand to the best of our ability as well, while speaking to the people that have given us the best advice and have also gotten us to this point where baby was there, I was holding her, you were holding her, she was happy, she was safe, you were now out of the woods. So yeah, I mean, I became very stern, which does happen every now and again. But yeah, for me, it was also just a sense of, this is what felt right and safe to me, and I wanted to explore that before being told, no, you can't do that, which I don't like hearing.
Which, I mean, it is pretty amazing because as I'm sitting here and we're talking about it, it's the first time that I'm really realizing like how our two roles kind of fit together, you know? Because the experience I wanted to have in birth was to feel like I had my own agency, and that was my biggest fear of going to the hospital, was feeling like I didn't have that agency, like I didn't have a choice, which is unfortunately what happens in a lot of women's births, which is why I wanted to have a home birth in the beginning, was so I wasn't coerced into something I didn't want to do. And so that was the experience I really wanted to have. And it's so funny because if you wouldn't have told me of all the things that you went through in order to like have that, like my experience was not that at all. Like I didn't have to fight anybody. I didn't feel judged by anybody. And you know, like when I look at that, I'm like, it's all because of you fulfilling your role, because you fulfilled your role as like that masculine protector. I didn't have to go through any of that. You know, I didn't have to deal with any of that baloney. You just came in and basically said, okay, when this and this happens, yeah, then we can sign ourselves out and we can go when we're ready to go. And, you know, like you stayed in the visiting room or the emergency room way longer than you were supposed to. Nobody really messed with us in there, you know, like because there was that sense of, I think there really was that sense of like, you were gonna not be okay with that anyways, so they didn't even try to mess with you.
Well, I mean, because obviously when we were going in and you had your placenta removed, obviously I was allowed to be in the room kind of next door until I was allowed to come visit you and sit with you. But then I got to the point where it's like, okay, visiting hours are over, so family and our friends and all the rest had to kind of leave. And my phone was dying, so my mom went and bought me a cable from the shop and gave me a power bank so I could charge my phone, because she's got a different phone to what I have. And as I had to go outside to get in, as I was coming back in, the one security guard was like, wait, no, you can't go in there. I said, well, look, my wife's in there. She's just given birth. We've just gone through this stuff. I am not standing here. I'm going in there. He was like, okay, cool, go ahead. And they kind of let me go through until, I think by the time I got up to the maternity ward, when I left, it was probably about just before 6 o'clock, and visiting time was at 7. And yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience. I went, got myself some food because I was absolutely starving. I had a 10-minute nap in the car. At like 10 to 7, I came inside, I came upstairs, went straight to you and went through everything. And yeah, I wouldn't change any of it. But yeah, I definitely was very much standing in my own power in that moment. Now I was not going to let anybody push me over.
Yeah, I think that was really, really important for you to be able to do that, for me to be able to reap the benefit of you doing that, so that I could have the experience I wanted to have. What do you think was in that experience for you? Do you think you needed to, like, you know, have some of that adversity in order to step into your power? Or what do you think was the significance for you personally?
For me, the big thing was just trying to make sure that you didn't have to deal with anything, because you had already gone through a hell of a lot. I mean, birth is not an easy thing, no matter what people tell you. So you had already been through so much that, for me, I didn't want you to have to then go through all of these other unnecessary things to find out what's happening. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't just have a baby come out of me. I'm still feeling strong enough. I'm going to go through these things and do what I can to make it easier for you, so that when I come to you as well, if you have a question for me, I can be like, okay, cool, this is the answer, and this is the answer, and this is the step, and this is what we're going to do, and that's what this is going to be. So that you didn't have to be like, oh shit, now we need to find out what all these things are. You can be like, okay, cool, so now I know, and then we move forward. And if I didn't have the answer, then I wouldn't have found out. Like, I won't know.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, the staff in the hospital were absolutely fantastic. Obviously, the ladies we worked with are absolutely amazing. And at the end of the day, the big thing for me was that both you and Claire were healthy, fit, and alive, and happy. And when I knew all of that had been accomplished, then my body was able to kind of relax a bit. And obviously that was by the point when we were starting to drive back home, at which point I was absolutely shattered. It was a very long drive back from Neisner.
Yeah.
I think
That was a very long drive.
I think that's one of the longest.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think time-wise the longest, but it definitely felt like one of the longest drives I've ever had back from Neisner to where we live here in the Crags. I mean, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I was shattered by the time I got home, and then I was just like got home and can't remember what we did when we got back. I was just
went to sleep pretty much.
I think we just settled ourselves in, and that was that, and we just stayed by one another, which was important.
Yeah.
It was just nice to know that on the day that our daughter was born, that we were at home together, all three of us.
Yeah, that we were able to. Yeah, I didn't want to spend the night in the hospital.
No, fuck no.
Yeah, so I am really happy about how that, even though I agree with you, that drive was super long and I wasn't even driving and it felt super long to me. And yeah, I can't imagine. I wouldn't have wanted to stay in the hospital overnight, even though that walk down to the car was the longest walk of my life.
God, no, that took
a lot out of me, trying to get up out of that bed, act normal. I feel like I hadn't really eaten that much, so I was like,
nothing.
My blood sugar was so low, but I was like, I was so afraid to pass out on that walk back, and I was like, I have to act normal because we signed ourselves out, so the last thing I want to do is freaking pass out and then end up back in the hospital, which if you're watching this, I know that sounds negligent, but like, I do know my own limits. It was really important for me for us to be home. And so I was willing to risk that experience on our way home. And we actually met a really nice person on our way out when we were waiting for the security guard to sign out our papers. Remember the guy with the two twin boys?
Yeah, he was
I just want to say I am editing this video right now, and I did not realize the signs of the twins that entire time, so I'm now re-watching this video and seeing all the twin flame signs within the twins that we met the day that we went to the hospital. And it's so funny because I literally did not put two and two together with the twins across the bed from me, and I did not think anything about the two little twin boys that we saw. But as I'm watching this now, I'm like, wow, twins and twins and twins and twins, which is so crazy. This is also a good time to mention that if you check the links below, there is a bunch of things available for you guys right now. I have my online course at its absolute lowest price that it's ever been at since I released it. And this course just has the 3 biggest blocks plus a bonus block that not many people talk about. Basically repairing your relationships if you are looking to attract your twin flame, if you are looking for soulmates, if you are trying to figure out the twin flame journey. I highly recommend checking out this course. It's the 3 biggest blocks that I've seen from all of my clients, all of the twin flames that I've worked with, myself included and my twin included. So if you're looking for more resources, you can get it now literally for $67.99. It's the lowest it's ever been and probably the lowest it's ever be. So definitely check that out. And then I have a really, really incredible special offer. This is for the twins that are ready in 2024 to stop messing around, to end separation, to really get on this spiritual awakening, self-healing path, and to do it with other twin flames. There's so many coaching resources out there for people, but there's not a lot of resources where we can all twin flames gather together, like-minded, spiritual natures, just learning and growing. And this is literally the step-by-step system that I used to come into union with my twin flame. It's all the things that I had to heal within myself in this journey, and so I highly recommend signing up for that. I'm only going to take a group of about 20 people, so this is a beta test on my group coaching program. So this is the first time I'm offering it. I'm offering it at $100 a month, and that is included. There's so many things included, but in that is 1 group coaching call a week. So that alone is just an incredible deal. So if you're interested in that, check the link. It will take you to a form where you can sign up, and it'll ask what times you're available and all that kind of stuff. And then I will be in touch with you for this program. So sign up for it. Keep in mind, I'm only taking up to 20 people in this program. I started off with 10, but it seems like there is more need for it than what I originally imagined. So I'm only taking up to 20. So if you are interested, be sure to get your name down now. And this is an incredible opportunity. Again, after this beta test, this group coaching is going to go up significantly. So for you to be the first one is going to be absolutely amazing. So if you're looking for this opportunity in 2024 for a 6-month group coaching with me and all other like-minded twins, sign up. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see you there.
He was very cool.
And he was very cool and
His sister
so
had a child
nice.
or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, it was all in all a pretty magical experience.
It was an incredible experience, and I'm happy to have this incredible family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you think I was gonna die at that point? Were you worried that I was gonna die? Based on what I said?
There was a moment or two when, especially when you were saying that the whole point about that if you kind of fell asleep that you weren't going to come back, there was a part of me that kind of thought like, shit, this is a reality, like it could happen. But I think that only lasted a few seconds, and I was like, actually, no, fuck that. You're going to be all right, and I will not take any other answers, even if I were to come in and bring you back to life myself. But I mean, obviously, I was worried. I was worried about you, that if you had to go through into a surgery or anything like that, I didn't want you to have to go through that. But I don't think there was any point where I was actually like, shit, she might die. I don't think that ever really hit me, because I think as well everything in me was just like, that's not a possibility. That's not going to happen. I'm going to raise my child with my wife by my side. And that is just the way it's going to be. And if you tell me otherwise, I will prove you wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think about that a lot in terms of karma. Like, what is our karma in order to... And if you guys don't know, part of the reason we named her Claire, which to me initially, no offense to anybody that's named Claire out there, if you're watching this, your name is Claire. It's not that I don't like the name, I actually love it now. But I always thought I would be way more out there, like woo-woo with names.
Yeah.
And we looked at a lot of names
Pixie
that were like really out there.
Who knows what else.
And so when we chose the name Claire, it was actually because we couldn't really agree on any other names together. And that...
We went through a lot.
Yeah, we went through a lot. And that I had a dream in the very beginning of my pregnancy. Actually, when I thought she was a boy, I had that dream. And she was sitting on my chest, and her name was Claire. And so we ended up just dropping that for a while. And then we came back to it late in the pregnancy and decided, okay, yeah, like this is going to be the name. Because she clearly like asked for it. And so when I was meditating on this, and I was like, what is the name Claire? Like, why? Why is this a thing? And what I really heard come through was like clear, bright, like no karma.
Clairvoyant.
Yeah, like so all the Claires, all the telepathic Claires. And so basically, when people have, like major birth trauma, or when people have things that come up with their child, or like, coming close to death in birth. Your brother has a story like that with his wife, and his child. So like things like that, like I very much don't feel like that is our karma, to have that big trauma. Because I feel like she's actually meant to, I don't want to say do more with her life, because those are very valid things to transcend, and those are very valid lessons, and those are very important experiences to bring into the world. But she's meant to create more from this clear place. So she wasn't going to have like a whole heck of a lot of trauma. She wasn't going to have like a lot of like quote unquote issues, like
Yeah.
in a way. And again, this is not to say like negatively towards babies that are born with any issues or any difficulties or anything like that, or this is not a superiority thing, nothing like that. But it's just meant to say like her life path is going to be different because she doesn't have a lot of that to transcend. She's coming in very clear, so she can just then create whatever she wants. And we see this in her so often. Like the moment we start to project anything onto her, that's what she becomes, you know, like even I remember the first day that your parents were coming to visit, her and I had this moment, and you remember I was feeding her and she needed to change her diaper, and you were asking like, oh, can my mom change her diaper? And it was like the first time she was meeting her, and I was like very uncomfortable. I was like, I don't want anyone else touching my baby, like the second day of her life. And so I kind of didn't really give you a straight answer. I was like, okay, like sure. And then I was really angry about it, and I was feeding Claire at the time, and she literally stops feeding. She looks up at me, and I'm like, you know exactly what's going on right now, don't you? And she smiled. And I was like, no freaking way, on the second day of her life does she have that awareness that this is actually what's going on right now. Like I was blown away. And she's done that time and time again with different situations.
Continuously.
So it's pretty crazy. And I know like parents are always like, oh, my child is amazing. And this is, you know, like.
But we're right.
But, but it's really actually true. No, but it's just, you know, it's just to say like her life is going to be different than a lot of people who are coming in to transcend trauma and karma, because she's not going to have a lot of that. You know, like she's of course going to have her traumatic issues. Of course, we're going to imprint trauma on her based on our own wounds. Like that's inevitable. And we knew that going into having a baby. But, you
can't
know,
avoid it.
No, you can't avoid it. That's the evolution of humans. But you know, I do think her life path is going to be very different because it will be so clear, you know.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the person she becomes as she grows. I think we definitely going to have our hands full, because she's incredibly strong already at
She's
8
smiling.
weeks. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, typical. But it's going to be an incredible journey, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else, literally anybody else. Thank you guys very much for watching our video. Comment below, let us know what's going on for you guys. Yeah, if you have any questions or anything like that, be obviously sure to subscribe. Subscribe to the channel for more videos. We have made a commitment to each other to do our absolute darndest to make a video once a week on the weekends, so you guys can expect these videos coming out like on a weekly basis. If you're looking for more twin flame support, you can go to the links below. I am now transitioning back into taking readings and coaching clients and all that good stuff. So definitely check all of that stuff out. 2024, I feel like, is going to be a big year for twin flames. I've already have people messaging me consistently for the past like couple months. People coming in together with their twin flames. I think it's going to be such a magical year. And 2024 is meant to be like, I think, a more positive year than the last couple years combined, just in like a spiritual perspective. So I can see a lot of relationships and love kind of coming together out of that. Or if you've been in separation for a long time, that union phase is now kind of coming, because this is 2024 is an 8 year. So that's a lot of like abundance. That's a lot of like infinity, obviously, as you guys know, is like the infinity sign is the 8 in a different direction. So there's this kind of completion and, you know, that type of energy around this year, which I feel like can have a lot to do with love and relationships too. So very exciting stuff. Anything else you've got to say?
I think you've covered all of it as per usual.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.